Okay.
was executed either via decapitation and becoming a theatre prop, or by being made to swallow molten gold. Crassus was not the only.
Oh my gosh. Molten gold. Alright. The video is late because I was super tired. Look, I just woke up. You can see in my face that I just woke up.
The Parthian Empire.
This was a suggestion that I was supposed to have done.
Empires in world history.
So
Rising from humble beginnings to earn.
Indo-Scythian. That was a
Parthia's
thing.
successes would have been impossible without their deadly bows and well-trained horses.
Skip.
Parthians are an elusive empire to study, particularly due to the lack of sources from the people of Parthia themselves. The Romans wrote plenty about the Parthians, but being their traditional archenemies, they often paint the Parthians in a negative light. So while we can claim some information from Roman writers, they should always be taken with a grain of salt. Additionally, some Chinese sources also mention Parthia, and the Chinese emissary Gan Ying is said to have gone to Parthia on his way to find Rome.
Bro, I swear, like, Chinese have always been everywhere. I feel like every single place throughout Earth, Chinese has always been there. Like, oh yeah, guys, we sent envoys there. Even the places that like far out throughout the oceans, bro. Reminds me of when I was reacting to that History Dose video, which I think the one where China meets Africa, bro. It's like, I didn't even know China have gone to freaking East Africa, man. It's freaking wild.
Beyond word, archaeology also helps us piece together Parthian society. In the land once ruled by the Parthians, archaeological sites such as Nisa in Turkmenistan have a significant Parthian presence.
Oh wow.
Moreover, an extensive corpus of coins allows us to establish a dynastic cohesion of Parthian kings. These coins often have Greek inscriptions on them, implying that the Parthians maintained continuity with the post-Alexander Hellenistic rulers who controlled Persia before them.
Blows my mind how historians are able to piece things together and make dots and connections together. Like, that is crazy. They just took coins and they were able to piece together the line of Parthian succession. That's very cool. It always kind of like really blows my mind. I mean, it makes sense, but I just never knew how historians were able to grab like archaeological tools and just dig, and when they find something, they're able to piece together what it is or where it's from. Like that level of professionalism. That's crazy. I mean, I respect it. I find it very interesting. I mean, I really do. But it always
Before we get into how the Parthians ended up conquering the Middle East, let us first take a broader look at the ancient world before their rise to power.
Right.
After the death of Alexander the Great, most of what had once been the Persian Achaemenid Empire was taken over by one of his generals, Seleucus I Nicator. The Seleucids had a unique approach to ruling the Achaemenid core, managing their empire in conjunction with the noble families of the former Achaemenid Empire in a sort of large web of social networks. As a result, the empire was more decentralized than other Hellenistic states, which lent itself to a more flexible cultural policy.
Right.
Hence, while the Seleucids promoted aspects of Hellenistic Greek culture, such as the worship of Apollo, Persian culture remained strong, albeit coexisting with a panoply of other cultures in the Seleucid domain.
You know, it really blows my mind how, because I remember one time, I actually talked about this guy before, but I did argue with a moron when I told him that I'm English, and he had no idea what the heck he was talking about, but he was talking about, oh, you think because you got conquered, even though I was never conquered by anyone. He said, oh, you think people who get conquered can suddenly like turn into the people that conquer them. I didn't even know. I lose brain cells thinking about that. But it's hilarious because he claims to be a history buff, but he doesn't even know what the heck he's talking about remotely. But I point that out because it's interesting how, like, throughout time, people who conquer other people, they always seem to adopt their culture or some cultural aspect. Very intriguing, really, really and truly, honestly.
In the west, the Seleucids ruled parts of modern-day Iraq and Armenia, where a diverse array of peoples, such as Jews, Babylonians, Armenians, and Greeks, lived. These regions were more or less the most stable of the empire. However, they were also battlegrounds in wars with powerful states like the Attalids, Ptolemies, Romans, Armenians, and Pontics. In the east, the empire lost its provinces to the Maurya Empire early on in the late 300s BCE. This region was also fairly diverse and would come to play an important role in Parthia's formation. Finally, in the north of modern-day Central Asia lies a vast steppeland that was important for trade throughout human history, and during this time was populated by nomadic, predominantly Iranian-speaking peoples. These peoples were often considered barbaric by both Greeks and Persians, due to such habits as having women archers on horseback. Their Zoroastrian religion was far different from the one of the Achaemenids, as they worshipped many deities rather than one. It is from these northern steppe lands that the Parthians would arise. The story
From
of the
Scythians.
Parthian Empire begins around
Scythian people are very... I wish we knew more about Scythians. They're so mysterious. They're so mysterious.
247 BCE, in the land of Chorasmia. During this time, the Hellenic Kingdom of Bactria had declared independence from Seleucid Persia, causing a struggle between the Seleucids and what they saw as a breakaway province. Meanwhile, in the lands between the Aral and Caspian Seas, a Scythian-adjacent people called the Pani were organizing under new leadership, with two brothers called Ashk or Arsakes and Tidad or Tiridates, managing to unite the many tribes of Parthia under their rule. Newly unified, the Parthians instigated revolts in the north and managed to take the regions of Hyrcania and Chorasmia from the Seleucids. Seleucus II was fighting a war with the Ptolemies at the time, and was unable to fight back effectively. Thus, the Parthians solidified their conquests, establishing the first capital, Ashgabat, which was located somewhere around modern-day Turkmenistan.
Interesting how back then there was no United Nations, there was no rules that you needed to do to set up a state. There's none of that, because there's rules. I'm sure some of you should know that, but there's rules that you have to do now if you want to set up your own country, right? Back then you could have just get up and just conquer a piece of land, and if you're able to hold it, congratulations, you're officially a state on the earth. Literally, like, that's it. I remember one time I was talking to someone and I was like, hey, you know that group, I'm not gonna say their name, I'm just gonna say their acronyms, IS. I was like, when you really think about it, couple, like, 1,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, right? Anything before the modern period, if they had literally just, because we all know how they rose up, they literally got up, they slammed both Iraq and Syria, and they were able to get a lot of territory. They were big, really big, bigger than England, actually. That's how big they were at their peak. And I was saying, dude, I bet you, bro, like, if they had done something like that, like, back then, like, I guarantee you, history would view them as a legitimate empire, even if they were brutal, or someone or some country would be like, oh, I'm the successor to them. But unfortunately for them, they did that in modern period, so nobody views them as that, right? Nobody views them as that. Everyone just views them as a simple group. So it's just crazy to me how that logic just kind of shifted, you know, like really interesting.
This isn't sure.
Seleucids pushed back against the rising Parthian tide in 209 BCE, when Antiochus III defeated the Parthians in battle, making them his vassals. However, this fealty would not last for long, as the Parthians soon broke free and started growing once more. The small Parthian state saw its first large expansion under Merbad I, or Mithridates I, the first royal to assume the old Achaemenid title of King of Kings on his coinage.
Oh wow.
Between 160 to 140 BCE, he initiated...
This is so interesting to me because I don't know the time period of Alexander the Great. Like after his death. I don't know, I'm very ignorant about a lot of time periods in history, which is another reason why I like reacting to these videos, because I do learn a lot. Now, in my other video, I don't know if I'm going to get much viewership here, but in my other video, I did say, hey guys, go recommend me some books on that specific topic. So I'm going to say it here. If you know any topics like relating to this, you know any books, recommend it to me. Definitely would love to read on it in the future. Although I did explain that my life is very volatile right now, so I don't have that free time. But eventually, when I do get more free time, would definitely love to, because there's a lot of periods in history that I've heard about or I vaguely know about, but I don't know.
Initiated a lightning campaign against the Seleucid Empire, which resulted in massive conquests in Media, Babylon, and Seleucia on the Tigris. These newly annexed territories would later become core territories of the Parthian Empire. But at the outset, Parthian control of these lands was tenuous. The locals in these cosmopolitan, city-dense regions had a very urban-centric view of nomadic peoples, considering them to be underdeveloped baboons. The Seleucids made a final attempt to regain their lost territories when Phraates, or Farhad II, ruled over Parthia, and initially saw significant success in this endeavor, as the locals saw them as liberators, delivering them from the yoke of Parthian barbarism. However, the reconquering Greeks enraged the people of the reoccupied territories with their outrageous economic demands. Thus, they revolted, allowing the Parthians to counterattack in 129 BCE and drive the Seleucids back to Syria. This ended all hope for a Seleucid reconquest of their Asian heartland.
Are you
and
serious?
Remain a diminished rump state until they were finally annexed by Pompey and the Romans in 63 BCE. Although having replaced the Seleucids as the masters of Persia, the Parthians adopted a lot from their Seleucid forebears, emulating their ruler cults and uses of Achaemenid royal vocabulary to ensure their rule was adapted to local circumstances. Once the Seleucids were defeated, the Parthians pivoted east, for they were under nomadic assault. The Scythians, nomadic Iranian cousins to the Parthians, were rampaging west from their homeland in what is now eastern Turkestan. Parthian king Phraates and his successors tried to stop them, but failed miserably. Meanwhile, rebellions had broken out in the western provinces, including in the Arab kingdom of Caracini. Overall, the Parthians were learning that conquering land was one thing, but defending and holding it was another. However, around 123 BC, King Mithridates II ascended to the Parthian throne and began righting the ship of state. After solidifying the Parthian grip in the west, he turned to the eastern provinces to deal with the nomadic incursions, where he pushed the Scythians back to the far side of the river Oxus and turned their newly founded kingdom of Sakistan into a vassal state. Mithridates was the first Parthian to rule as a neighbor to the Romans, who reached the Euphrates at around this time. During this period, the kingdom of Armenia also bordered Parthia and was engaging in many...
Kingdom of Armenia, criminally underrated. Why does no one never ever talk about Armenia, the Armenian Golden Age? Why does no one never talk about that? I have to learn more about it. I don't know too much about it, but Armenia, criminally underrated. People really forget how old Armenia is, bro.
Conquests across the region. Mithridates initially tried to woo the Romans into an alliance against Armenia, but the infamous Sulla contemptuously rejected them. Mithridates, who felt slighted, instead joined forces with Armenia and Asia Minor against the Romans, initiating a vendetta that would last centuries. After the death of the able and powerful Mithridates II in 88 BC, the empire was rather stagnant. Armenia, meanwhile, was conquering as far south as Ecbatana, causing the Seleucid rump state to invite the Armenian king to occupy the throne of Syria and claim himself to be the king of kings, in direct contradiction to Parthian royal ideology. The Romans, alarmed by the expansion of Armenia in Asia Minor, offered a treaty to Parthian king Phraates III, who took it, resulting in a rare example of Roman-Parthian cooperation as they worked to contain Armenia.
Oh, wow.
This did not change the Roman perception of the Parthians as a lesser entity, something they would regret later. Before we continue on to the epic wars with Rome, we must first understand how the Parthian military worked. The Parthians built their military using their old nomadic traditions, while adapting it to also function in wars with sedentary empires, such as the Seleucids, Armenians, and Romans. In general, the Parthian army was de-standardized. Parthian rulers usually let local kings rule various regions of the empire in their stead, and so had to call upon these royal vassals to amass local troops based on demand. The core of the Parthian army, called Spad, had a core of cavalry and archers, usually Iranians, who were trained in such arts from their infancy. Due to their nomadic roots, Parthians generally favored cavalry warfare because it allowed for flexibility and speed in engagements. Using arrows, the Parthians would work in Simpsons-style hit-and-run tactics which would confuse the enemy and provide lightning bolt strikes that left their enemies weakened and demoralized.
Yo, those are nice.
Wars with Rome began after the fall of Tigranes the Great of Armenia. The Parthians, who
The
had
slow
cooperated with the
decline
Romans, had
of
installed members of the
Armenia.
Parthian Arsacid.
Oh, dude, it's so tragic how Armenia, like after the Armenian Golden Age, Armenia just fell off, like completely. But definitely gotta learn more about Armenia during the Armenian Golden Age. I want to know what's sad. What's sad is that now Armenians are not under threat from Turkey and Azerbaijan, people who aren't even indigenous to that region. Isn't that crazy?
Dynasty in various Caucasus states. In addition, after Pompey's invasion of Armenia, initially fruitful negotiations fell apart after disputes arose over the fertile crossroads of Mesopotamia. As a result, a few years later, Marcus Licinius Crassus, the Scrooge McDuck of ancient Rome and great sponsor of the first triumvirate YouTube channel, initiated a campaign against the Parthians, which ended disastrously. In the infamous Battle of Carrhae, Parthian troops faced the Roman legions and managed to brutally defeat them.
Oh wow, they faced off Roman legions and they won. Wow, impressive. Okay.
Executed either via decapitation and becoming a theater prop, or by being made to swallow molten gold. Crassus was not the only.
Oh my gosh. Molten gold. Oh, I feel it. Oh, that hurts. Oh, I can feel that in my chest. Oh, that is brutal.
The Roman military
Bloody hell.
Parthians humiliated.
Oh my
as they
gosh.
ambushed Pacorus in 51 BCE, fought off Cicero when he was governor of Cilicia, and went toe-to-toe against both Mark Antony and his arch-rival Augustus on separate occasions. The end result of all this was that the Parthians succeeded in taking over parts of the Caucasus and Mesopotamia, and installing vassals in their place. Over the 1st century CE, many wars between Rome and Parthia were fought in Mesopotamia, inflicting horrors upon the locals and resulting in some territorial changes. It was here that some of the instability of the Parthian mode of government unfolded. Many Parthian emperors would often assume power through palace coups against their sons or brothers.
Oh wow.
The Romans would, on occasion, use this to their advantage to secure some sort of peace. Moreover, the Romans were also capable of fomenting rebellions in Parthia's decentralized provinces, which, as previously mentioned, exercised considerable self-rule. One of these rebellions, led by a man named Gondophares, took place in the eastern end of the empire. Declaring independence, Gondophares established his own dynasty, the so-called Indo-Parthian kingdom, with himself as yet another king of kings. He then proceeded to fight the Indo-Scythians and Indo-Greeks in the east, and take control of parts of Gantara and Bactria, becoming one of the myriad peoples who inhabited this rich land. It was only in the 2nd century CE that the Romans began to make incursions inside Parthia. Trajan, who was a maximalist in terms of extending Roman influence over the Euphrates River, initiated an invasion of Parthia in 115 CE. The campaign resulted in the maximum ever extent of the Roman Empire, as well as the fall of Ctesiphon, Parthia's capital. This was an unstable victory, however, and the Parthians quickly regained many of these territories. Hadrian, Trajan's successor, was a geopolitical realist, preferring to maintain the Euphrates as a border. Under Parthian king Vologases III, the Parthians continued to regain ground, but the Romans turned the tide against them, and in AD 165 once again entered Ctesiphon. Some western Iranian provinces were thus ceded to Rome, and the unstable Parthian government was unable to make further gains. This was what enabled Emperor Septimus Severus to attack and capture Ctesiphon again in AD 197. This time the Parthians were firmly in decline, and they would soon lose control over their western vassals, like Armenia, to Roman control. Some of these fortunes were reversed in AD 217, when Artabanus V defeated the Romans in battle. This was, however, too little too late for the once mighty empire. Fratricidal strife with his brother Vologases V led to chaos in the empire, one that a small dynasty led by a man named Ardashir would soon exploit. Having now provided an abridged version of Parthian history, let us now look at the empire's culture and society. As stated, Parthia was an amalgamation of the nomadic culture of its rulers, the Achaemenid and Hellenistic culture of its forebears, as well as the myriads of local cultures of its subjects and vassals. Parthia was more decentralized than its predecessors or successors, with much more focus being put on local vassal kings than satraps appointed by the central government. Parthian society was not without its innovations. In particular, the Romans greatly admired Parthian irrigation techniques and deliberately emulated them. This also suggests that, although generally taking a hands-off approach to their vassals, the Parthians still had an active hand in guiding their agricultural and economic output. Trade with China was also important, as the Parthians acted as a sort of mediating force between the Middle East and Rome. The Parthians maintained this fluidity in the realm of religion as well. Unlike their Sasanian successors, who preferred to unify the doctrines of Zoroastrianism, the Parthians appear to have allowed for much more regional diversity in the Iranian religion. This is seen in coinage, where Greek deities merge with Iranian ones, such as Zeus Oromasdes and Athena Artemis Anahita. The use of Greek probably was appealing to many Parthian vassals, who preferred it over the Parthian language, which they saw as barbaric.
Wow! Why they think their own language is barbaric? So even as far as Parthia, they even adopted Greek customs. Wow! Because I know the Romans did it. Wow, I didn't know. Okay, I learned something new today. Again, this is why I like doing this stuff, because I learned something new today. You know, it's crazy, right? Because lately, I've been getting some comments of people who are telling me that I can't be a history buff because I don't read books. Now, although I've explained this in a few of my videos where A, I literally just didn't know where to find these books, or B, back then as a kid growing up, I just didn't have the money. It's just that obvious. Now that I am a young adult, I'm working, blah, 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 and I have money, blah, 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 and I can, but my life is still volatile. I don't have time to read these books. it's still impressive nonetheless. And I mean, I do read stuff from online too, so there is that. Still impressive nonetheless how I was able to grasp a lot of knowledge at my age, because it's not every day that you see a 19-year-old with a lot of knowledge on history like me. No. And I say this because imagine if I did have access to books, if I was able to read books right now. Because guys, I don't do anything. I don't play games. I don't really do anything. I don't do much of my time when I have free time. I would be sitting there reading books all the time. So imagine if I did have that, right? Because I have people who are saying, oh, you can't have valid takes because you don't read books. Even though just because you read books doesn't mean that you can't not have a garbage take. But anyways, imagine if I was able to read books. Because I don't care what anyone says. 9 times out of 10, I have good takes. I don't care what anyone says. And I give valid reasons and valid points to that. So I don't really care if people disagree with me. Now, if I had books, geez, I would be just unstoppable, frankly speaking.
Iranian and Greek pantheons seem to have been worshipped across the empire, and local religions, such as that of the Jews, Babylonians, Armenian pagans, and even proto-Christians, Buddhists and Gnostics, had some place in the laissez-faire empire. With that said, the Parthians placed a great deal of focus on Ahura Mazda, the high god, as well as Anahita, the fertility goddess, and Mithras, the sun god, a well-known triumvirate of deities in Iranian polytheism. In Ctesiphon, government was arranged based on 2 councils, one of the great nobles and one of the elders and magi who advised the king. This was an intriguing deviation from Achaemenid norms, but it is unclear what the exact functions of these 2 councils were. While much has been said of the Parthians' love of Greek culture in coinage, for which many 20th century Iranian nationalists chastised them, the Parthians were an adaptable and diverse people. Some Neo-Iranian cultural revivals actually began under rulers such as Vologases I in the 1st century AD, who put on his coins a quintessentially Persian fire altar with a sacrificing priest. The Parthians did
how in the world can they decrypt that?
Using ruler cults, something which many Iranian dynasties did. Parthian art and architecture was also very diverse and syncretic, with archaeology in the western provinces revealing buildings that are influenced by Achaemenid, Hellenistic, and Mesopotamian forms. Some of the most important features of art from the later Sasanian and Islamic periods, such as the Avan and stucco decoration, have their origin in the Parthian period. We can thus see that Parthian culture was a product of its Hellenistic and Iranian origins, with remarkable flexibility and syncretism. The Parthian Empire, like many of its vassals, was in decline by the 3rd century CE, torn up in a civil war between dynastic claimants Artabanus and Vologases, while a new regional ruler from Ardashir Kawara in the south of Persia, called Ardashir I, rose to prominence via conquest. In 224 CE, he managed to conquer the city of Ctesiphon.
The Sassanids!
This heralded the end of the Parthian Empire.
The Sassanids!
The Sasanian Empire was much more centralized and Irano-centric than Parthia, and followed a very different path in terms of governance.
This is what I'm saying, bro. Like, remember what I said earlier in that video where I said, bro, back then you could have literally just rose up, if you were good enough to keep your land, congratulations, boom, you're an empire in history. You're a legitimate empire / state. Like, imagine if that group IS did that. It's crazy, man.
However, as we have seen, some of Parthia's innovations survived in culture and architecture. Legends even claim that Mani, the founder of Manichaeism, who was born on the border between Iran and Iraq, claimed descent from Parthian kings. The Parthians today are usually remembered as an enemy of Rome, and by some as a bizarre...
Yeah, that's how I know them.
...in Iranian national history. However, Parthia produced a great deal of artistic, cultural, and economic innovations, refusing to stick to one type of governance. Using Hellenistic, Iranian, nomadic, and many local types of cultural and political organizations, The Parthians produced a tumultuous yet innovative empire in between the Silk Roads. It
Nice.
stands out as a nexus point which
Wow.
transformed Iran and its surrounding regions, and its achievements are still with us to this day.
Wow, learned a lot.
Thanks again.
I did learn a lot.
for spon-
I did learn a lot. I did learn a lot. Excellent video that was suggested for me to react to. Look, if you got any suggestions that you want me to react to, go comment it down below. If you like what I have to say, my reactions, go check out my other reactions and on my channel. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're new and you made it to the end, man. Thank you for watching and goodbye.